Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we are looking to find the best of fun books out there. And this time we are doing a review of the book Immortal by Sue Lynn Tan. This is a romantic fantasy or fantasy romance, or as the new term I have just discovered, a romancy. And it is a book that kind of takes Chinese mythology and places their plot in a mystical world. And so let's talk about that. But before we get to the plot, I will mention that this book is entirely first person point of view. Some people don't like that. It's the kind of point of view where it's all I did such and such instead of she did such and such. So it's all from our heroine's point of view. You never get anybody else's point of view. And some people don't like that, so I just point that out there. Okay, it's the plot. Okay, so apparently this, for your world building, this takes place in a place where there is immortal, celestial, superpowered beings. Sometimes they're called the Immortals. Sometimes they're called gods in the Asian sense of gods. And then you have the mortal realm that are just average people. And they have, I guess, a different kingdom setup. So the mortal realm has a king and queen, if they're both around. But the king and queen of the immortal realm would be superior. So I'm going to put it as basically the empress to kind of denote the differences there. Anyway, in this particular setup, this one kingdom is protected by an unbreachable wall that protects the kingdom from other bad, immortal, magical beasts and beings, but it prevents them from leaving too. And at the time that the book opens, the mortal rulers are kind of starting to resent this situation. They kind of want to break free from this. So they're like, we'll accept no protection if you'll take down the wall, kind of the way they want it to be. Anyway, that's kind of the backstory. So the story starts, and the main character is shown to be the princess of the mortal realm, and she is sick, perhaps dying. And her grandfather, who is king of the realm, has given her a present, a lotus flower that's magical, that heals her. But the celestial beings, the immortals, discover this and basically come down wrathfully, start destroying things, setting some buildings on fire. And so the grandfather tells the main character, go hide, I will delay them until the flower that I've given you has been completely absorbed by you and you'll be safe then. So grandfather goes to confront the immortals who have come down in anger, and the princess kind of sneaks back to find out what happened. And in that meeting, the immortals kind of threaten the grandfather, and he has a heart attack and dies. And the two people there are the empress of the immortals and the general of her armies, it kind of sounds like. And the general goes over to the heart attack grandfather and tries to heal him, but it's too late and the grandfather is dead. And the princess is then outraged because if they had not come down and been threatening, her grandfather would never have died, her beloved grandfather, her only family. And then the rest of the story is kind of the Celestials want this magic flower, and the princess, our main character, wants the Celestials to go away, and she's trying to negotiate that politically in such a way that she can survive and not just be, okay, we're going to, off with her head because she's just mortal and we're irritated. But also, during the process of all this, they're having troubles with monsters basically invading the mortal kingdom. And they're like, where are these people coming from? Isn't your, super powerful magic wall supposed to keep all these people out? and they're not doing a good job apparently. So there's a whole mystery kind of going along with that, and lots of action going along. Okay, so that's kind of a really slim basis of the plot that's, interesting. There's lots of betrayals and back and forth, and I like this. I did like the plot overall. The people that are side characters, not the main characters, sometimes are not what you expect. Like, you think you have this person pegged and it turns out that they're actually something else or someone else or having a different motive or something going on. So you're kind of, there are a lot of surprises in that respect. There's also plenty of betrayal between the two main characters, our hero and heroine, because this romance is not a straightforward falling in love. This is an enemies to lovers trope. And normally this is not really, my favorite trope, but it can be done well. For example, Pride and Prejudice can kind of be thought of as that. She really despises him, and eventually they discover it's kind of a misunderstanding and they get together. And that's actually pretty typical of an enemies to lovers trope, because what you want, and this is difficult for an author to come across, you want to understand why they despise each other, empathize with what the problem is. But it can't be too evil that you're like, why are they getting together? I mean, this is like some horrible person. Why do you love that person? So you have to do a situation such that it's nasty but not too nasty or something. So in this respect, the author did a fantastic job. The beginning of the story, you have the setup with the grandfather dying, and the setup with her realm basically being subjugated by these immortals. And so you understand where she's coming from, that she doesn't like immortals. She specifically doesn't like this general dude that kind of got her grandfather killed. And so it works out. On the other hand, it's not an unforgivable thing. The general didn't intend for grandfather to die. He tried to save the grandfather. The political situation was not his doing. I mean, he's not in charge of that. He's just, one of the many immortals and not even a ruler, so he didn't really have anything to do with it. So all of the problems that she has with him are understandable but forgivable. So you can see why she despises him at the beginning, but you can also see why she falls in love with him by the end. And, just like any other romance, they live happily ever after. At least you get that impression at the end. Okay, so I liked the startup of this. I didn't, though, love how it dragged on. So the enemies to lovers thing, what you kind of want is, okay, you start out, despising each other, distrusting each other, and then kind of gradually overcome that. And the author really didn't try and do that very hard, I felt. Like there was a lot of betrayal, back and forth, paranoia, distrust, mostly on our heroine's part, because we're constantly in her head, right? We get a constant, never-ending, it seemed like, refrain of, oh, these immortals, they only want the flower that I have. They only, care about themselves. They don't really care about mortals, and he can't be trusted. And if I give him the flower that he wants, then he will have no reason to help me try and politically free my kingdom. All these types of things that it's, still like 3/4 of the way through the book, this is still going on. Like, there hasn't been any progress, and that kind of got irritating and frustrating, and I was just like, so I'm going to give you an example of that in my reading a little excerpt. So this is, as you can kind of see, halfway through the book on page 221 to 222. So something has just happened that is basically stopping our general, whose name is, and I'm going to totally mispronounce this because it starts with a ZH, and I'm not Chinese, and so I'm going to totally butcher that pronunciation, but we'll call it Zhang Wei. And then, so that is our general, our hero, our love interest, Zhang Wei. Lines deepened across his face, growing ashen, sweat streaking from his brow. He was not well, already weakened. If he exhausted himself, he might die. Pain struck my heart at the thought, but I told myself any concern was for my kingdom and what he had pledged to us. "Stop, Zhenghui," I said forcefully. "You are hurting yourself." He didn't turn. He did not reply, like he was ensnared in the throes of a spell, too far gone on this path of destruction. I grabbed his arm, as cold as ice, but I didn't let go. "You promised to protect me. If you die, what will happen to me?" I would say anything to stop him, even if I had to guilt him into it. He stilled, blinking as he lowered his hands, his breathing ragged. "The skies are sealed. This must have just happened the moment my shields broke." And I'll skip a couple of plot details that won't make sense in isolation and come back a couple sentences later. "There is no time to waste. I must return to the palace." His eyes locked into mine, his jaw tightening. "I need my strength for what lies ahead. Would you give me the lotus? I will keep my promises to you, all of them." Something writhed in my chest, my resolve faltering. I had denied him before, outright, but it was harder now. He was right. He needed his power, and we needed the god of war to keep us safe. This danger threatened us all. And as I looked at the bodies on the ground, fear gripped me that Zhenghui might be next. Yet, if I gave it to him, I'd have nothing to hold him to his word. I might lose the only chance that my kingdom would ever have to break free of the Immortals. It wasn't just my future at stake, and I didn't trust him enough. "I can't," I said haltingly. And, it just goes on from there. So you kind of see halfway through, it's still that exact same refrain that we have through the entire story, over and over again. The Zhenghui basically does something selfless. He's acting to protect people. He's given his word that he will continue to do so. And she just won't believe it, won't trust it. Now, he has betrayed her in the past. So there is, it's not totally unreasonable for her to distrust him. But it just gets tiring to repetitively do this time after time after time, because except for that first betrayal kind of towards the beginning of the book, it doesn't repeat. He only seems to have good actions. It seems to be, positive both for her and her kingdom, and she continues to act this way constantly. And that just, I got irritated at that. All right, so other things I liked. I liked the world building. So this apparently is a book that takes place in a world that the author has created before, but it's not related to those books. Like, maybe it'll give you a little bit of backstory about the Celestials somewhere else, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with this book, and you can read this and understand what's going on. You understand the politics between the two, the mortal and the immortal realm. You understand what's happening with, the wall and the kingdom and kind of the magic that's going around. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory and kind of interesting. It's not usually, I don't think it's too often that you'll get confused about what's going on. Maybe occasionally, wait, was it that character? Was it that character? Or occasionally like, wait, we were here and now we're there. How far did we go? What does the landscape look like? I'm not quite sure. She wasn't big on details, the author, in that respect sometimes. But overall, I kind of like the world that she created, the creative, weird, magical realm. Again, I would say I liked the plot twist. There were several things that came up that I'm just not going to give away, but they were interesting. So disliking, besides the constant refrain where she's, not liking that she's coming to care for this character. So I didn't relate to this romance. I didn't relate to the main character. There was too much of the, well, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have done that, oh, I wouldn't have done that either. I just wouldn't have made the choices that our main character had. And that's what you want, especially in a romance. You really want to be that character. You want to love being in her footsteps, so to speak, and, you know, falling in love with the hero and everything. And I didn't feel that. Besides not relating to the main character, I didn't particularly care too much about the hero. And that's partially because of the way it was written. He's kind of this stone cold, stoic, emotionless soldier for a lot of it. And he gives hints of emotions. I'm not saying that he's emotionless, but it's very hard to relate to somebody that it seems like they're distant all the time. I mean, he's kind a lot, but I didn't feel like I knew him or cared about him, or, you know, why is she falling in love? Because a lot of that falling in love was kind of like what I read in that excerpt where she was just feels something for kind of very little reason. The romance didn't do anything for me. Okay, great, they're happily ever after, but yay for you. And, you know, for a romance, that's not the kind of outcome that I think I should have. I should be loving the characters and thrilled that they're together, and it just wasn't there. So, between the fact that I didn't like the romance, I didn't like the main character too much, I didn't end up, I'm not putting this in my best of list, which is really disappointing because this is now the third in the row that I haven't, and I'm really surprised because I keep pick books that I think should be, and then I read them and go, oh, well, I guess it was okay. So this is just okay. That's as far as I can get. I will admit, I really debated on this book on whether to put it in best of list despite my not loving the romance. And partially this was because I was looking at it going, okay, just because this trope of enemies to lovers and this particular main character and this didn't really move me, and I was just kind of like, oh, it was okay, does that mean it's just my personal preference? Because it is well written, I think. I think the author does a good job with her prose. There's not gigantic plot holes, or, you know, you don't sit there and scratch your head and go, why is that character even there? You know, like I've done in some of my previous reviews where I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. No, this one was fine with that. So I kind of was like, okay, should I include it on my best of list, even though if it didn't move me? And I decided against it, and it was mostly because there are so many romance and fantasy and romancy books out there that I'm sure I can find some that are slightly better, that actually that I can enthusiastically say, yes, I endorse this, I really like you to see it or read it because it's so fantastic. And I don't want to put something on my list that I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, it was good. You'd probably, you know, if this is your thing, you might like it. I just don't want to do that. I would rather do something that I could just be wowed over. And this isn't it. So it just ended up on my okay list. Eventually, I will get some better ones, really. Okay, my next book, part 2, is going to be an adventure, Sharp's Tiger by Bernard Cornwell. So I believe this is an adventure story taking place in India. Since my last book in India was a historical fiction that I wasn't impressed with, I'm hoping another book in India, because I would really like to have some books in foreign cultures that are fantastic. So I'm trying again. A book that takes place in India. It takes place in 1799, and I don't know anything more about it than that. It's an international bestseller, says so on the top. How exciting. So probably it's going to be good, a good adventure story. And I hope you enjoy this review and will join me for the next one. And hopefully we finally get another book that will be populating our 1,000 fantastic fun books list. And thank you for watching. Bye.